What are you doing to take care of your gut? Gut health is one of the most important factors in taking care of your immunity, and my guests today are seasoned experts in the world of natural health, plant-based nutrition, endurance fitness, and naturally fermented alcoholic beverages for health-conscious athletes. This is the 5 a.m. Miracle, episode number 367, Probiotics and Plant-Based Fitness with Brendan Brazier and Mark McTavish. Good morning, I am Jeff Sanders, and this is the podcast dedicated to dominating your day before breakfast. My guests today are the founders of Pulp Culture, a naturally fermented alcoholic beverage based on 100% raw fresh juice that contains B vitamins and 6 billion probiotics. Brendan Brazier is a well-known vegan athlete, author, and founder of Vega, an industry leader in plant-based nutrition. Mark McTavish is an entrepreneur and founder of 101 Cider House. I'm thrilled to have both Brendan and Mark here on the show today. Welcome, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So let's just jump in with a quick little bio of each of you. Brendan, we'll begin with you. Just give us a quick highlight reel of some of the work that you've done and what you do now.
Well, it started off, I'd triathlon professionally for 7 years, Ironman triathlon back in my 20s, and then co-founded a company called Vega, that's 16 years ago now, with my partner Charles back then, and we since sold it. We sold it 5 years ago to Danone, that now owns it and distributes it all over the place. I'm still involved, but no longer own any of it. And now Mark and I work together on a new project that we'll talk about today, fermented juice, which is something that I've learned a ton about, and Mark's really taught me a lot there. So that's from kind of where I was to what we're doing now.
Excellent. And Mark, what about you?
I'm Canadian as well, just like Brendan. I actually moved down to Los Angeles about 6 years ago, and when I came down, I had just left the fitness industry for about a decade, and had spent time previous to that in the beverage world. So I've always been a passionate beverage enthusiast and fitness enthusiast, and I wanted to come up with an idea that would merge those two paths together. So I set out on a mission to create the world's healthiest alcoholic beverages, and that's what I've been doing here in LA for the last number of years now. And met Brendan a couple of years ago. He had picked up our product, which is called 101 Cider House. It's a sour cider that we make here in LA. But he picked it up on the shelf, and he found out that after 14 years of not drinking, that drinking could be good for you, and he really enjoyed the product. So he reached out, and we got connected. And a couple of years now, fast forward to now, we're business partners. We launched Pulp Culture this year, which is our new brand. And we're just trying to make the healthiest alcoholic beverages we can. And we truly view ourselves as making fermented beverages that happen to contain alcohol.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And it's a unique one, I know, in terms of the world of alcohol, and definitely with kind of the healthy kind of food movement. And that's one thing with the plant-based movement especially I want to get to now. I went vegan about 10 years ago, and I've followed kind of plant-based evolutions ever since then a lot more closely. And I'm curious, just from your guys' perspective, especially Brendan having worked with Vega as a product that I've used personally for a long time, what do you think has changed in the plant-based movement over these last few years? Like where is it now compared to where it was even a few years ago?
Yeah, the last few years, it's been pretty amazing, really, to see the interest change. Because back when I started, I've been vegan now 30 years, since I was 15. And back then, I felt great doing it. And it was just something that I did on my own. And I didn't even really talk about it in the beginning. I just felt good doing it. And yeah, the last few years in particular, it's really, really come a long way. Game Changers, the film, that I think really helped a lot of people understand. I know that was a big part for Mark as well. I took Mark to an advanced screening of that. I'm one of the EPs on the film. And so Mark and I went to this advanced screening a while back now, almost 2 years ago, I think. And Mark's been vegan ever since. So I thought that was really cool that, film would have an impact on someone so directly, which is great. Obviously, that's what the plan was. And there's just so many options now. Beyond Meat, of course, has done an amazing job with education around it, and then, of course, an amazing product to back that up. And yeah, we've seen big business get into it, which is good. All these big companies now have plant-based alternatives for burgers or for shakes as well, which just wasn't the case a while back. And I think that's very positive. Some people, of course, don't like big business in general, but I think it can get more good food that's plant-based to more people at a lower cost, then that's a good thing, all in all.
Yeah, certainly. And there's no doubt that that's been a major player in the last few years. I know even just for me, 10 years ago, it was much more, I guess, difficult in a sense to make a transition like that. And today, there are so many more options that are available. It's really powerful. And just we'll cover this one topic briefly. I will get to it. I know there's a lot to get into here, but what would you say are kind of like the major health benefits of a plant-based diet? And if somebody did make a switch to that, like what kinds of, I guess, lifestyle or health changes might they experience if plants become the kind of the central role in their diet?
Well, for me, my experience was, like I said, it was a while back now, but a reduction in inflammation. As an athlete, you train a lot, you build up a lot of inflammation. You can bring that down with a more alkaline plant-based diet, lots of greens, lots of chlorophyll. It's really going to make a big difference. I found it increased my range of motion. Pretty sure it reduced my risk of injury. I just wasn't getting injured, whereas a lot of people who were doing the same kind of training were. Better sleep quality. I would sleep more deeply, I found, and I would wake up fresh and rested, wouldn't crave caffeine or sugar. So I found I was just getting when I was asleep, I was more asleep, and when I was awake, I was more awake. It really had that divide. Sometimes I think for people that line between being asleep and being awake becomes blurred. They're not sleeping well, so when they're awake, they're not really fully awake. So it's I noticed that, and yeah, leaner and just better in general, just feeling better. Like I say, digestion was a big part of it. So those were some of my experiences from the beginning there.
And Mark, what about you in terms of your recent switch there?
Yeah, I mean, I think energy and inflammation are the two things that come most to mind, but it's more so a philosophy. I think if you want to do better in life, you gravitate towards certain things. And nowadays, I think the reason that plant-based as a movement has really exploded is because you have such a large audience of educated consumers who now all have the information that they need. It's now left up to them to decide, do they want to do better for themselves, the people around them, and the world, or do they want to not do better for all of those involved? So I think people have a greater conscience about things now. They're more educated. And I think when you give people the education and set them down a path, then you have to give them the opportunities to plug into that as well. It's kind of like, buying an electric vehicle, but having nowhere to charge it, So, going plant-based is great if you're, cooking at home or eating at home rather, and buying your own groceries and just you're at home all day long. And I think during a pandemic now, you can do that. But for all the years leading up to now, you would have places like New York and LA and Toronto and Vancouver. There were great spots to be for someone following a plant-based lifestyle. But if you're in the Midwest of the country, where are you going to go eat? Even here in Los Angeles, there are many times where you sit down at a restaurant and they have one vegan option. And it's almost an insult to you if you're living a plant-based lifestyle and you think there's 30 items on the menu and 29 of them have animal-based products or meat in the product or in the plate. So, it's sort of confusing, I think, at first when people want to make a better choice for themselves, but they find it's not really available to them. And it becomes disheartening. So I think nowadays you're seeing a lot of change on a larger scale because now the infrastructure is in place to support it.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I went vegan living in Nashville, and I still live there today. And so living in the South, the options are definitely different than they are on the coast. And so I can definitely speak to my own personal experience there that, yeah, it's great to see options available for so many people. One thing I would definitely want to hit on today as well is probiotics. This is a topic that plays, I think, pretty deeply into Pulp Culture, which is your guys' product that we're going to talk about as well. What do you think is the real kind of, I guess, benefit of prioritizing gut health, and how do probiotics play into that?
So I started learning about probiotics quite a while ago now, and included them in the first formulation of Vega back 16 years ago, and really seemed to find that I just felt better. I just didn't have the bloating. I don't think I needed to eat as much because from what I was reading and researching at the time, when food is passed through your stomach, your body's not totally done with it. It goes into both the large and small intestine, and your body can still extract nutrients from it if it has healthy intestinal flora. So I found that I just didn't get as hungry. I would get full on less food, which I thought was kind of interesting too, because of course your body's just being more efficient with it and able to pull out more nutrients. So yeah, it's been something that I've always valued since then. And now there's a lot of research coming out about the brain gut connection. So if you have healthy gut and healthy intestinal flora, there are less chances that you'll have some brain issues later down the road. Some research suggests, as well as better mental clarity and focus as well. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then, of course, yeah, what we're doing here, Mark and I, just naturally creates probiotics through fermentation. So it's obviously in line with all of that.
And so let's get to, I guess, the product itself with Pulp Culture. What have you guys created? You sent me a sample, which I love, but I want you to kind of let our audience know a little more about kind of what this product is, how it works, how it plays into, I guess, kind of that healthy balance between alcohol and plant-based food. It sounds like a controversy waiting to happen, but I'm just curious as to how does that work well together?
So, Jeff, first and foremost, I think people categorize alcoholic beverages as beverages that were intentfully made to contain alcohol. When, truth be told, alcohol is a natural byproduct of something we call fermentation, which is a natural God-given science. It's something that Mother Nature gave to us. And we discovered, of course, as human beings, how to work with that. But back in the day, we didn't have refrigeration. We didn't have places to keep things shelf stable for through the winter or for whatever period of time we needed to access those products, whether they were vegetables or fruits. We had ways of preserving them through making jams and jellies and pickling and fermenting them. So there are definitely I think things to bring up here historically that where we've added value for society when looking at fermentation and fermented foods. A lot of people have existed in a world where they were a big part of that. I think in Korea and Japan, people look at fermented foods as a health science. It's something that gives to their body, it helps their gut, but it's also providing them with shelf stability and a way to maintain preservation of food. So, in Canada where I grew up, we did that. You would store stuff in your cellar through the winter and you'd be able to eat those strawberries or those cucumbers because you pickled them and preserved them. So I think the natural science of fermentation is really interesting and exciting. And I think when we talk about fermented foods, people get excited because they think that that's going to be gut healthy. There's going to be probiotics. It's something I'm doing that's good for my body. But as soon as you mention alcohol, they think, oh, it's alcoholic. Yeah, it's a fermented beverage and it contains alcohol. That's not really a health product. That's got to be bad for me, right? Because it contains alcohol. Well, the thing is, it comes down to intention. And when people want to make an alcoholic beverage, and that's the only intention they have, you're probably not going to get the healthiest outcome. Where with what we do nothing more than let cold pressed juice sit there for 3 months and ferment naturally, spontaneously on its own by Mother Nature's devices. So when it's done, you're left with alcohol. Surely that's a part of the process, but you're also getting the full spectrum of outcomes that are beyond alcohol. So you're getting all the organic acids, the live cultures of probiotics. You're getting all sorts of vitamins and nutrients and phytochemicals that are contained in these products. It's much more than just alcohol. And when you consume it in that way, it has a very healthy net effect on your body or net impact.
This sounds similar to kombucha. Now, I've drank that for a long time as a fermented beverage. How does kombucha compare to what you guys have created here?
Yeah, I mean, we are everything that kombucha is and then some, and we're kind of all the things that kombucha wishes it could be in a way. Kombucha is basically water with sugar added to a SCOBY, which is a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast that eat the sugar to give you alcohol, right? So truth be told, kombucha is alcoholic as well, although a lot of people don't talk about that. But when you ferment sugar and yeast eat that sugar, you're going to get alcohol no matter what. So you always get alcohol and carbon dioxide as a byproduct of that fermentation of sugar. And then when they're done with that, they have something that's probiotic and now slightly alcoholic, and then they typically back sweeten it with fresh pressed juice, right? So that's being put in there to make it taste good, of course. And then it has to be refrigerated because, of course, if you don't refrigerate it, the bacteria and yeast could continue to eat the sugar and result in more alcohol and exploding bottles or exploding cans, whatever it may be. So we're very different in the way that we start with 100% cold pressed juice, and then we ferment that out fully and completely. So the yeast are done working, the bacteria are done working. You're now left with a shelf stable product that can be kept anywhere in 100-degree heat in the trunk of your car even, and it's not going to ferment further. It's not going to explode. It's 100% shelf stable, but it is still a living probiotic beverage that happens to contain 6 billion CFUs of probiotics, which is typically, anyways, on the shelf, you find 1 billion probiotics in a bottle of kombucha. We're 6 times greater than that.
Yeah, that's impressive. That's definitely a thing I would never expect to hear from a traditional kind of alcoholic beverage. You mentioned this idea that you would still get the health benefits of the juice. I'm curious as to like what kinds of ingredients are you guys including, and what kinds of health benefits would somebody kind of expect to get like from one of your drinks?
Yeah. Typically we don't guide with claims. We typically guide by ingredients and formulations. So we put in the good stuff and it does what it's supposed to do. We don't need to educate people on, what matcha or ginseng or turmeric or, super mushrooms, what these things might do for you. Typically our consumer that we're targeting are people that already understand the value proposition of those ingredients. So we choose from source verified suppliers, and we're working with things that are non-GMO and produced the right way. And then we're choosing the right ingredients to intentfully produce blends or formulations that we come up with that, really speak to a certain function. So when you're consuming an alcoholic beverage and you want to get an uplifting experience, we have, from Pulp Culture, we have the Think and we have the Hustle. And those are a couple of beverages that you could look to if you wanted to just get after your day, be productive, be creative. This is an alcoholic beverage that you could reach for that would complement those parts of your day. And then if you wanted to sort of turn it down, you're looking for a more down tempo experience, we have the Restore and we have the Relax. And, they're speaking to a function in the way that if you're looking to just de-stress or, kind of tone it down at the end of the day, you can consume these products and it might complement that phase in your day as well. So with 101 Cider House, our cider brand, we don't do that. We don't speak to the function per se, but we do talk about them being zero sugar and probiotic and very good for you. But we kind of leave it to the consumer to decide based on their level of education, what is the desired outcome and what is the intention of picking up this product.
Yeah, that's great. I know that one thing you guys focus on a lot with your company is being sustainable. And I'm curious, how does that play into, I guess, the cultivation process of Pulp Culture?
Personally, for me, I think this is something that it's one of the things that drew me into this. Of course, one of the reasons I like eating plant-based too, just sustainability aspects around that. But we've just gotten together an eco report, and Mark can expand on this in a minute here. But I thought was really interesting is because, of course, apples are dry farmed. So we get them from the Pacific Northwest. So the snow, of course, melts on the mountains, and then it runs down to the groundwater and the long roots from the apple trees pull it up into the apples. And then we, of course, press them. So they don't need to be irrigated the way crops would. So if you're growing crops, for example, sugarcane that you're going to feed to kombucha, you need cropland, and that takes a lot of irrigation. Or whether you're growing wheat or barley for beer or whatever you're growing to make spirits out of. So it's a really good way of doing it. Obviously uses far less water, and being a California brand, we're very mindful of that. And also too, the CO2 capture of the trees, the apple trees, as opposed to crops that then get pulled out and don't retain any of that CO2 in them. So those are two of the aspects that I think are pretty interesting, but there are a lot more around that too. But like I say, as a California brand, we really wanted to be as efficient as we possibly could with water. And then energy use too is far less because we just let it ferment naturally. We don't have to heat the tanks, or there's no cooling, there's no refrigeration needed because it's shelf stable. So there's a lot of energy savings as well beyond even just the water.
And Mark, I guess it's an eco report.
Yeah, we basically just put together a summary of the environmental impacts that we include as a part of our process, start to finish. From raw materials to finished goods. So that's something we're going to be talking more about, posting on our website, telling more of that story, because we feel like it's really meaningful when you have a lot of competitors of ours, as an example, investing in say 1% for the planet, or planting trees, or giving back in the ways that they can. Maybe they're cleaning up the oceans. These are all great ways to give back and have an impact for sure. But I think if your product itself is just the cleanest and most sustainable version of a product in this category that it could be, then that's something that we should be telling as well. That story is just naturally a part of what we do. And, I think it's very relevant with today being in California. Obviously, water usage is key. But, just producing a product by nature's way, I think if everyone followed that ethos and let nature guide them, or rather have nature guide their process, I think then you end up with products that are more sustainable because that's what nature intended.
Yeah, I was going to ask in terms of how your company differs, I guess, in terms of other alcoholic beverage companies, because it sounds like your approach is kind of almost the exact opposite of the companies out there. So, like, is that the case where you really have kind of like, I guess, more of like a planet first perspective or a natural first perspective there?
Yeah, I think actually, again, it's just derivative of our natural approach, the impact on the planet or lack thereof. I think that's not something that we came up with. It's not something we had to create. We didn't have to, work toward that story of being good for the planet. It's just that when you follow Mother Nature's way and do it the way that you were supposed to, which is spontaneous, then you end up with a product that is sustainable. And, I like to use the analogy here of if I met you out front of a juice bar and I said, hey, Jeff, can I hold on to that juice for you for 3 months? And when you come back here, I'll give it back to you. And when I do give it back to you, I won't have opened the container at all. I won't have done anything to it. I haven't added anything or taken anything away. But that cold pressed juice that you're used to drinking after 3 months is now alcoholic, it's probiotic, and doesn't contain any sugar. Would that kind of blow your mind?
Yes, certainly.
Right. And I'm also going to put about $4 back in your pocket because the juice that you purchased for $8 or $7.50 is now $3.50 because that's what we charge for a can of our product.
Very impressive. Wow. Yeah, and that's one thing I noticed. I know when I tried the product myself, I was kind of shocked by how, I guess, the way the product is marketed on the actual can itself. It tells you the ingredients. It tells you a bit of that story. I think that for those who are, I guess, new to that world of fermentation or an alcoholic beverage that is, from the earth to a certain degree, I think that the drinking of the process, it's almost like you're having a different experience with it than you are just like, say, a typical beer or another alcoholic beverage.
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, the processes that are involved to make beer, to make wine, to make spirits, it would blow your mind. I mean, they're so complex. They're so full of processing elements and different ingredients and things that are there to ensure that you're going to get a consistent outcome. So every time you drink their product, it should taste the same, look the same, smell the same. It needs to be replicable so they could scale it to a certain level of revenue, right? And, if you look at wine as an example, and I talk about this quite a lot in my day-to-day, I can guarantee that you've never seen ingredients or nutrition facts on a bottle of wine that you've ever consumed. It's just not possible because it's actually illegal. And that just blew my mind when I discovered that.
Why is it illegal?
The government basically has a regulatory board in place to approve formulations and approve labeling, but then it's left to their own devices to do that and kept internally. And they will not allow you to put on your label nutrition facts or ingredients. You'll never see it as a consumer on a shelf. It just will never happen. So regardless of the reasons or the intentions why, I think as consumers, we have to say, well, I don't care why. I want to know what's in my wine.
Yeah, that's definitely, I mean, that's a lot of value in just knowing the story behind what it is you're consuming. I think for me, this was a big part of going plant-based to begin with, was that I wanted to know what I was putting in my body. I think that that's something you guys are hitting like right in the head there with really saying like this is what this is.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to pull a fermented beverage that happened to contain alcohol out of your garden, the only way to do that would be to pick up our product. We're just so unique in the category. There's nothing else that you could just stumble upon and find that is as close to source or as close to nature as our product is. And we just felt like the world was deserving of that and consumers were deserving of that specifically. And we feel like it requires a lot of education and it requires a lot of back and forth and jumping through hoops and red tape with regulatory boards and people who have maybe never seen something like this before. But Brendan is, he's an evangelist of sorts when it comes to plant-based diet and, living better and doing better for yourself. Brendan's been there as a figurehead for many years now, showing consumers the way. I mean, his face and his name is on every package of Vega as the promise to say you're doing better in your life if you're consuming this product. So who better to partner with on a product where our whole philosophy is drink better?
Yeah, and to that degree, Brendan, I did want to ask you as well, how does a product like Pulp Culture play into, let's say, like someone who has a fitness-based lifestyle? You want to be fit, you want to be healthy. I mean, is the alcohol working against that process, or is it still is just part of that healthier blend?
Well, it's interesting because I hadn't drank at all for 14 years. And then I saw some 101 cider on the shelf about 2 years ago at Whole Foods here in Venice. And it was a scrumpy one, which has one ingredient. It's just apples, which amazed me. I was looking at this can sitting on the shelf, and I just didn't understand how can you have just apples and have probiotics, have zero sugar, have B vitamins, have organic acids, all these things in this. And so that's how I actually met Mark, because I saw that. So I emailed info@101cider.com. Mark responds right away. He had known of me through Vega being in the industry, the fitness industry in Canada. So we met up, became friends, started hanging out, and then I got involved and invested in 101, and then we started Pulp Culture together. So that's how that started. And I just thought, well, not drinking for 14 years, the reason I didn't do it was I just never felt great. And I was trying to race professionally. I was trying to build a business. And I thought, I just don't have time for this. I don't have time for hangover. I don't have time for downtime. I have to feel good all the time. So drinking is no longer part of my life. So I cut it out. But then I thought, how bad can an apple be that's just fermented and now has no sugar and probiotics? So I tried it. I liked it. I felt great. I found it helped with digestion. I had it with food. And I felt really good after. And I could go to the gym an hour and a half later and feel great. And certainly no bad effects at all. In fact, very much the opposite. I felt looser, and I felt thoughts flowed more easily, and I just became a big believer in fermented juice. So when Mark and I decided to do Pulp Culture, it just seemed like a natural fit, adding the adaptogens in, botanical adaptogens, and some fermented superfruits as well to make that effect even better. So I don't look at it as at all as a like a cheat day or anything like that. Very much far from that. I think this is actually a very healthy thing. And as Mark said off the top, we don't look at this as an alcoholic beverage. It's a fermented beverage. But sure, one of the outcomes of fermentation is alcohol, but alcohol doesn't have to be bad. It can help you relax more and just think more freely and just get into a different mind frame, which I think can bring a lot of value too if you do something good with that.
Yeah, certainly. I think it's really powerful that it's not a cheat day. I think that's a really good point to make. That it's just part of what you're doing. Is there anything else about the product that I did not ask about that you guys want to be sure to mention?
I want to mention one thing, Jeff. I just feel like, again, as we talk about alcohol, I feel like that typically dominates the discussion. And that happens in our day to day. People just assume that we're an alcoholic beverage company, and they think that as consumers, they know everything about alcohol because they've had alcohol. I've had a bunch of drinks in my life. So, yeah, I know what alcoholic beverages are. But if you've been told the wrong story or told a story that isn't true or most representative of what alcohol really is from nature's perspective, then we've kind of been misguided and misled. And I think it's important to kind of rewrite the script and have people understand that, alcohol and the way that we've consumed it is, not great. I mean, the products that we pick up off the shelf are not well made typically. The alcohol that's in those products was more or less put in the product by intention to get you drunk. And that was sort of your intention from day one when you picked up the product, was just to have a drink so you could get drunk, right? But if you're in Europe, as an example, people there drink alcoholic beverages, but they view them as food. It's something else on the table. The intention isn't to get drunk. The intention is to, kick my feet up and enjoy this part of my day and do a favor to my body. And it's a gift to the body, is to have a drink or two, take off the edge, kill the stress. And I think if we look at stress as really the culprit here as to why we have a drinking problem, maybe that's fair, but I don't think it's fair to say that alcohol is the culprit when we look at our drinking problem as a society. I think behavior is the problem. So, we consume alcoholic beverages mindfully, and then we don't have problems. If we consume them unknowingly because we buy the wrong thing, and then we consume them in a way that's unmonitored, and we drink, 10, 12, 14, 16 drinks, and we do that every day of our life, yeah, that's not going to be good for us, right? So like anything else, alcohol deserves education and a mindful approach and an understanding so that we can do a better job in our experience with it.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the idea of being mindful with it, because I feel like that's really what this is all about, is just the awareness, the education piece you just mentioned, and then, of course, being able to integrate those things in a way that is done on purpose, and then so you get the end result that's probably a healthier end result you're going for. Guys, this has been great. I really want our listeners to learn more about Pulp Culture and to find out where they can get it for themselves. So where should they go to dig in further?
Online's the quickest way, the easiest way. So 101cider.com or pulpculture.la. If you want to find us on Instagram, it's 101cider and at Pulp Culture Juice. So 101 and Pulp Culture are both of our brands. They're both cold pressed juice that's been fermented. They're just designed for a bit of a different intention and targeting a different audience.
Okay, fantastic. I'll have those links for our listeners this week in the show notes page. And yeah, thanks again, both of you guys. It's been really great to dig into these topics. I think it's really important information here. I think this has been really enlightening. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And thanks for letting us take the stage and spread the good word here. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
And for that action step this week, take care of your gut. Gut health is incredibly important when it comes to immunity and ensuring you operate at your best each and every day. Now, there are many factors that play into a healthy gut, so take the advice from Brendan and Mark seriously as you reshape your diet and fitness routines. And of course, if you are above the legal drinking age, try Pulp Culture and 101 Cider House for a new take on what it means to relax and maintain your healthy lifestyle. For all the links discussed this week, go to the show notes page at jeffsanders.com/367. And that's all I've got for you here on the 5 a.m. Miracle Podcast this week. Until next time, you have the power to change your life, and the fun begins bright and early.